मदान्धः देहं च तं न चरमा स्थितम् उत्थितं वा सिद्धो विपश्यति यतोऽध्यगमात् स्वरूपम् दैवादुपेतम् अथ दैववशादपेतम् वासो यथा परिकृतं मदीरमदान्धः देहं च तं न चरमा स्थितम् उत्थितं वा सिद्धो विपश्यति यतोऽध्यगमात् स्वरूपम् दैवादुपेतम् अथ दैववशादपेतम् वासो यथा परिकृतं मदीरमदान्धः देहं च तं न चरमा स्थितमुत्थितं वा सिद्धो विपश्यति यतोऽध्यगमात् स्वरूपम् दैवादुपेतमथ दैववशादपेतम् वासो यथा परिकृतं मदिरारम्मदान्धा देहं च तं न चरमा स्थितमुत्थितं वा सिद्धो विपश्यति यतोऽध्यगमात् दैवादुपेतमथ दैववशादपेतम् वासो यथा परिकृतं मदिरमदान्धा Vaishnavis. देहं च तं न चरमा स्थितमुत्थितं वा सिद्धो विपश्यति यतोऽध्यगमात् स्वरूपम् दैवादुपेतमथ दैववशादपेतम् वासो यथा परिकृतं मदिरमदान्धा देहं च तं न चरमा स्थितमुत्थितं वा सिद्धो विपश्यति यतोऽध्यगमात् स्वरूपम् दैवादुपेतमथ दैववशादपेतम् वासो यथा परिकृतं मदिरमदान्धा Synonyms, please repeat. Deham, material body. Cha, and. Tam, that. Na, not. Charama, last. Sthitam, sitting. Uthitam, rising. Ba, or. Siddha, the realized soul. Vipashyati, can conceive. Yataha, because. Adhyagamat, he has achieved. Swarupam, his real identity. Daivat, according to destiny. Upetam, arrived. Atha, moreover. Daiva vashat, according to destiny. Apetam, departed. Vasaha, clothing. Yatha, as parikritam, put on, madira mada andha, one who is blinded by intoxication. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Because he has achieved his real identity, the perfectly realized soul has no conception of how the material body is moving or acting, just as an intoxicated person cannot understand whether or not he has clothing on his body. Please repeat. Because he has achieved his real identity, the perfectly realized soul has no connection of how the material body is moving or acting, just as an intoxicated person cannot understand whether or not he has clothing on his body. Purport. This stage of life is explained by Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. A person whose mind is completely dovetailed with the desire of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and who engages 100% in the service of the Lord forgets his material bodily demands. Because it's a short purport, I will go on and read the next text also. Text 38. Deho pidaiva vashaga khalu karmayavat swarambhakam pratisamikshata eva sasu tamsa prapancham adhiruddha samadhi yoga swapnam punar na bhajate pratibuddhavastu. Translation. The body of such a liberated yogi, along with the senses, is taken charge of by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and it functions until its destined activities are finished. The liberated devotee, being awake to his constitutional position and thus situated in samadhi, the highest perfectional stage of yoga, does not accept the byproducts of the material body as his own. Thus, he considers his bodily activities to be like the activities of a body in a dream. Purport. The following questions may be posed. As long as the liberated soul is in contact with the body, why don't the bodily activities affect him? Doesn't he actually become contaminated by the action and reaction of material activities? In answer to such questions, this verse explains that the material body of a liberated soul is taken charge of by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is not acting due to the living force of the living entity. It is simply acting as a reaction to past activities. Even after being switched off, an electric fan moves for some time. That movement is not due to the electric current, but is a continuation of the last movement. Similarly, although a liberated soul appears to be acting just like an ordinary man, his actions are to be accepted as the continuation of past activities. In a dream, one may see himself expanded through many bodies, but when awake, he can understand that those bodies were all false. Similarly, although a liberated soul has the byproducts of the body, children, wife, house, etc., he does not identify himself with those bodily expansions. He knows that they are all products of the material dream. The gross body is made of the gross elements of matter, and the subtle body is made of mind, intelligence, ego, and contaminated consciousness. If one can accept the subtle body of a dream as false and not identify oneself with that body, then certainly an awake person need not identify with the gross body. As one who is awake has no connection with the activities of the body in a dream, an awakened, liberated soul has no connection with the activities of the present body. In other words, because he is acquainted with his constitutional position, he never accepts the bodily concept of life. Translation of text 37 again. Because he has achieved his real identity, the perfectly realized soul has no conception of how the material body is moving or acting, just as an intoxicated person cannot understand whether or not he has clothing on his body. Om Ajnanatirmirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Hare Krishna. We are reading from Canto 3 entitled Status Quo and Chapter 28, which is continuing the absolutely wonderful instructions of Lord Kapila to his mother Devahuti on devotional service. And today we are covering text 37 and 38. So in text 37 purport, Srila Prabhupada has referred to how Srila Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, also known as Nectar of Devotion, has explained these concepts of real identity and the constitutional position of an individual, of a pure devotee. And incidentally, we are covering Nectar of Devotion in our Bhakti Shastri, so Nectar of Devotion is one of the most spectacular books ever written, and it has amazing amount of information. So I looked into this book to find out how Srila Rupa Goswami has talked about the real identity. And right from the preface all the way to the different verses, Srila Rupa Goswami has mentioned so many things about a constitutional position, what the features of a pure devotee are, what is self-realization, and so forth. So I've taken a few of these statements by our acharyas, and we'll discuss those. The first one is, when we talk about real identity can only be realized if we know of two very critical facts in our life. And this is referred to as something that should be followed and also a prohibition, as per Srila Rupa Goswami. And that is, always remember Krishna and never forget him. So these two statements have to go side by side. We cannot say, I am always remembering Krishna. We have to add the second part, which is never forgetting Krishna, because these are two very distinct statements. So Kansa and other demons were always remembering Krishna, but they were not remembering him in a favorable mood. And Srila Rupa Goswami has stated very clearly that is not devotional service, where you're meditating upon the Lord, but not in a favorable mood. And in the preface of Nectar of Devotion, our acharyas have written, real self-realization and realization of Krishna actually go together simultaneously. So when we question ourselves, who am I? Why am I on this planet? What is my goal of life? What am I supposed to do? What is my dharma? All these questions can be answered if we understand and realize Krishna. So simply realizing ourselves is not enough. We have to move one step forward and realize Krishna also. Who is God? What is my relationship with him? How can I serve him? And so forth. And then in the introduction of NOD, it is said, one should be free from all material designations. That I belong to this country, that I belong to this race or this caste or this nation. Because that will make us identify ourselves with the body more and more. And it is mentioned he should be restored to his pure identity, in which he engages his senses in the service of Krishna. So we have so many senses. We have acting senses, working senses, gross senses, subtle senses. All of these senses need to be engaged in the service of the Lord. It is mentioned that even one sense is enough to distract us and carry us away from Krishna. And that can lead to our downfall. And Srila Rupa Goswami has said, of all the senses, the one which is very difficult to control, probably the most difficult to control, is the tongue. Because if we are not able to control our speech, we can cause problems to others, we can give them pain. And in the same way, if we are not able to control our eating habits, the tongue will keep on eating, and that will also give us impetus not to follow meditative practices in a proper manner. And then in NOD of 1, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has said that the advancement of material knowledge, actually it's a very important statement that he's made, the advancement of material knowledge renders a person more foolish because it causes one to forget his real identity by its glimmer. This is such an important statement in the modern world, where more and more modern technological advances are made, and the life is apparently being designed to make more convenient. And actually, if we all agree, it's actually going the opposite way. Rather than making it more convenient, it's making much harder for us. So I was just reading the news as I was driving yesterday, and because of the fires which happened in Palisades, the huge fire. And that's one of the ways that Mother Nature, Mother Bhumi, responds back. When she is being exploited, the nature will attack back. And this is just one small instance. Droughts, famines, earthquakes, fires, and so forth. So I was reading in the news that because of the fire and more than 10,000 structures being burnt to the ground, there is so much toxic waste which is accumulated, and the government doesn't know where to put that toxic waste. It's lead, asbestos, it's just enough to cause so many problems. So they moved to a public beach, and they're dumping all the waste there, and they're storing it. So there's a lot of human rights organizations which are standing up and protesting that why is this waste being placed on a beach where children actually play. So this is telling us that when we advance materially, when we construct these fantastic homes which have all kinds of amenities, when they burn down, there is only toxic waste which is generated, and now you have to find a place to store this toxic waste. So this is just the fallacy of our material nature, and Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has said that material advancement can only lead to doom. Which sounds, one has to be really introspective on meditating on this, because everyone is looking at the glimmer of material advancement, because it offers us so many conveniences, bodily comforts, sometimes mental comforts, but in the long run, it is like nectar in the beginning and completely poison in the end. And then in NOD of 2, it is mentioned that suppose one does not develop Krishna consciousness in this human form of life, he is thrown again into the 8,400,000 species of life. That is a huge number. We are so blessed to have the human form of life. In fact, when I don't want to use the word preach, when I advise my students about how important this human form of life is, and how if they don't purify their lives, they'll have to take birth again, sometimes as an animal or an insect. The students are very bewildered. They try to ask, like, how can we go back when we're already the human form of life? And I have to explain to them, depending on your activities and your karma, you can be demoted downwards and you'll have to come back again to the human form of life. So it's a bit hard to explain to the younger generation because they're so conditioned to think in a specific manner. So you're really talking to a block of wood, so to speak here. And it is mentioned here in NOD 2, the recommendation of Srila Rupa Goswami for reviving our original Krishna consciousness is that somehow or other we should apply our minds to Krishna very seriously and thus also become fearless of death. Everybody has some kind of fear in their life. Everybody. I can speak about myself. I have a lot of fear. Today morning when I was driving, it's only a distance of about 12 miles from my home, but it takes more than maybe 1 hour, 10 minutes to drive. Normally the drive is 25 minutes, but because of the rain, it takes 3 times as much. And my husband was worried, do you want to drive in the rain or do you want me to drive you? Because there's a lot of bad people driving on the freeway, so just one hit and then you're completely shaken up. So I was constantly remembering the Lord, let me just reach the temple peacefully. And once I give the class, then it's fine, you can do anything to me, but let me make it in time for the class. So we are always fearless of something. This is a very small element that I talked about, fearful about being struck on the freeway, but there's so many things we need to be fearful of. The biggest fear in our life is birth, old age, death, and disease. If we are not fearing that, then all other fears are really useless. We have to be fearful of coming back on this planet again and going through those cycles of misery again and again and again. So that is real identity. In fact, these two translations and purports are brilliant because they talk about real identity, perfectly realized soul, detachment from the body, and so forth. So I've based my talk on those. The second aspect is, who is the perfectly realized soul? It's very interesting. When I was reading Nectar of Devotion, chapter 10, it is mentioned there explicitly, and it really hit me hard, that both the gopis, who are pure devotees of the Lord, and the demon Kamsa achieved the same goal. So if you meditate on this statement, it's really bewildering. How can someone who's a pure devotee and someone who's so inimical to the Lord achieve the same goal? The difference is, as mentioned in NOD 15, the demons achieve only the impersonal Brahman and they merge into the Lord's Brahmajyoti, while the pure devotees understand the personal form of the Lord Bhagwan and they render service to him on his planet. It may seem like there's not much of a difference, but there is a huge difference. Because Krishna has three aspects: the impersonal, the localized Paramatma, and the personalized Bhagwan. So the destination is very different for different kinds of devotees. And for us, to merge into the Brahmajyoti is actually, it's not recommended, and it's derided upon for pure devotees of the Lord. So it is mentioned here by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that the process of hearing is the specific means of self-realization in this age of Kali. So we talk about Shravanam being the most important, and that is why Srila Prabhupada has given this fantastic recipe of understanding Bhagavatam in the morning and Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the evening. That is all based on Shravanam. And in Bhagavad Gita 7.19, Lord says, after many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. So despite the fact that there could be maybe 25,000, 30,000 people practicing in Krishna consciousness, we are all trying our best. But the Lord says such a great soul is very rare who actually surrenders to the Lord. So I was thinking, what does it mean by surrendering to the Lord? And reading Srila Rupa Goswami's teachings, it is mentioned there very specifically that it is 100% surrender through mind, body, words, temperament, behavior, characteristics, and so forth. Even 99.9% is not enough. It is 100% surrender to the Lord is designated as a Mahatma, and that person is so fully absorbed in the Lord, he or she is mentioned to be in Samadhi. And in Nectar of Instruction, chapter 2, it is mentioned, the main problem confronting the conditioned souls is the cyclic passage of birth, death, old age, and disease. So we really, really have to understand this principle. We don't want to take birth. We don't want to get old. And for those of us who are advancing in our ages, I can speak for myself. And I was talking to Mother Tadit right now. We were discussing our bodily pains. And it's amazing how this body, which gives us so much pleasure when we are young, can actually become such a source of pain as we grow old. So one has to remember, although the body is very temporary, it will give us pain, and that can impact us both physically as well as mentally. So one has to be ready that if we don't want to come back into a body again, we really have to take to Krishna consciousness very, very seriously. And perfectly realized soul, I was again meditating as I was driving. It was very rainy and I could not see very clearly who was on the back of me. And I realized when I turned on the defogging mechanism in the car, that takes a little bit of time to defog the front windscreen as well as the back mirror. And I was thinking that defogging just the front end of the car is not enough. I need to defog the back also because I could be in danger. So what I was meditating on was, it is not only important to cleanse ourselves internally, it is also important to cleanse ourselves externally. Simply cleansing ourselves externally, taking 3 times bath a day, being nice to the Vaishnavas, compassionate, humble, submissive, all that is wonderful. But internally, if we don't cleanse ourselves, we have to always have the realization, maybe I'm alone in the temple, but Krishna is always watching me. He is the witness, he is the proprietor, he is the controller. So even if nobody is watching me and I have not so great thoughts in my mind, Krishna is able to read them. So one has to be very, very careful that somebody is always watching me 24/7. Even while I'm sleeping, Krishna is there in my heart. So this is extremely important for us to understand. Then the third aspect which is talked about is detachment from the body. And in Bhagavatam 11:25-16, it is mentioned, when consciousness becomes clear and the senses are detached from matter, one experiences fearlessness. So how do we detach from our matter, from our senses? That is extremely difficult for most of us, and I speak for myself, because we are identifying ourselves with our body so intricately, and it's very hard to detach ourselves. And in translation here it is mentioned that how a perfectly realized soul is moving and acting without actually being connected with the material body, just as an intoxicated person cannot understand whether he has clothes on or not. And the Lord actually takes charge of the body of a devotee. And I was thinking how this is such a reassuring statement, that I am currently in my body, but the Lord is taking charge of all my activities. That means I am doing everything with my senses, but the controller is somebody else. So all my activities apparently appear material in nature, but they are all dovetailed in the service of the Lord. And this is exactly what is meant by the Lord takes charge of all the activities of a pure devotee. Srila Prabhupada has quoted in a morning walk in Los Angeles in 1972, quote, "That detachment is required. That is the special qualification. You cannot be completely detached. If you are to be detached from something, you must be attached to something. Otherwise, you have no perception." So simply detaching ourselves and saying, I'm going to cut myself off from the society. I'm not going to be interacting with human beings. I'm going to hide myself in the mountains and simply meditate on the Paramatma living in a cave. That's not enough. Srila Prabhupada has said here, when we detach ourselves, we do need to attach ourselves to something higher. And that something higher is Krishna. So detachment and attachment. Detachment of lower tastes and attachment to higher tastes have to go hand in hand. And the next aspect which is mentioned here excuse me, is a liberated yogi. It is mentioned in the translation of 38. The liberated devotee, being awake to his constitutional position, is situated in the highest perfectional stage of yoga. So I was thinking about what is liberation. In the common words, we say liberation means trying to understand I am not this body and being relieved or moving away from this bodily concept of life. So there are 5 types of liberation as mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela 6.266. There is Shalokya, which means staying in the same planet as the Lord. There is Samipya, staying near the Lord. There is Sarupya, having the same form of the Lord. There is Sarishti, having the same opulences as the Lord. And finally, the one which pure devotees never aspire for is Sayujya, merging into the impersonal form of the Lord here. And it is mentioned here in again Chaitanya Charitamrita here, a pure devotee does not like even to hear about Sayujya Mukti, which inspires him with fear and hatred. Indeed, the pure devotee would rather go to hell than merge into the effulgence of the Lord. So this is reiterating again how the concepts of impersonalism and voidism and monism are pure poison for a pure devotee. And in the conversations between Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he actually mentioned the impersonalists who do not accept the transcendental form of Lord Sri Krishna and the demons who are always engaged in blaspheming and fighting with him are punished by being merged into the Brahman effulgence. So this was very interesting. Merging into the Brahman effulgence is regarded as a punishment. Although it is regarded as mukti for the impersonalists, because they understand they're not this body and they're released from the bodily conception of life, but the fact that they are being transported to the Brahma Jyoti and they stay there as living sparks temporarily is actually regarded as a punishment here, as mentioned in Asisi. And again, Bhattacharya continues, there are 2 kinds of Sayujya Mukti, merging into the Brahman effulgence and merging into the personal body of the Lord. This is very interesting actually. One can merge into the bodily rays of the Lord and one can merge directly into the body of the Lord. And both are derided by pure devotees. The ones who merge into his Brahma Jyoti, they live like temporary sparks. And I use the word temporary. Why? Because even those who are in the Brahma Jyoti have the fear of coming back to the material world. they can so-called fall down. What is the main reason for that? The main reason is they do not achieve ananda or bliss in impersonal Brahman. And each one of us wants ananda. We all want to be joyful. We all want to be happy. So I was meditating on this, and since we talk about Sat Chit Anand, Sat is eternality, Chit is knowledge, and Anand is bliss. And I was questioning myself while preparing for the class, of all these three, if someone were to offer me, pick one of them. Do you want to be eternal? Do you want to be full of knowledge? Or do you want to be always joyful? Immediately my response was, I want to be always happy. Even if I live for a short period of time, I want to be happy. Even if I don't have enough knowledge, I want to be happy. So here also it is mentioned here that impersonalists who actually are present in, who are at the Brahma Bhuta platform, and they are merged into the impersonalism aspect, they will actually have the capacity to fall down because they're always looking for bliss. And Srila Prabhupada has mentioned that falling down means because they want to derive bliss, they are always moving towards philanthropic activities. But those are also at the bodily platform. They will not give enough bliss here. So the detachment of, for us to be detached from the matter is very important, to take full shelter of the Lord and actually praying to the Lord, Lord, I belong to you. Please, I am a puppet in your hands and lead me as you want me to be led. That's our humble prayer to the Lord. Then the last few sections that he's talked about is destiny, destined activities, and awakening to our constitutional position. Srila Prabhupada has mentioned in Civilization and Transcendence, chapter 2, try to understand what is what. The first thing is that your destiny cannot be changed. That's a fact. But in spite of your destiny, if you try for Krishna consciousness, you can achieve spiritual success. This is very reassuring for us, that destiny is on the platform of our material nature. But it is also mentioned here, I'd asked this question to one of the Maharajas, that how can we change our destiny when we take to Krishna consciousness? And I was given the response that you cannot change your destiny. You can reduce the sinful reactions, you can minimize them, but you cannot escape them completely, because it is dependent on our previous karmic reactions. So Krishna is so kind. When we take to Krishna's lotus feet, he can reduce our sinful reactions. Maybe instead of getting a fracture on my leg, I just get a little pain on my foot. So I do get a reaction, but the reaction is minimized drastically. So I will suffer, but because of Krishna's mercy and his blessings and mercy upon me, that reaction will be minimized. And then it is also mentioned here in Bhagavatam 10.5.30, where Nand Maharaj is talking to Vasudeva, and he says, every man is certainly controlled by destiny, which determines the results of one's fruitive activity. And then in Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Jarasandha is saying to Ashwathama, Jarasandha, who is Krishna's enemy, but still I never lament or rejoice, because I know this world is driven by time and fate. In battle with Krishna, I and my 23 armies lost 17 times. I was destined for defeat. Imagine a personality like Jarasandha speaking such philosophical statements. And then it is also mentioned in Mahabharata, chapter 28, where Kripacharya, the guru of the Kauravas, said to Ashwathama, two factors influence the outcome of all acts, our endeavor and our destiny. Without both, there is no success. A man who does not work, but who depends on destiny alone, will be ruined. So we cannot say, if I get my birth chart made and the birth chart says, you will become very rich when you are 45 years of age. And I cannot sit and say, okay, I'm going to become very rich, it's in my destiny, so I should not work. It is mentioned here, endeavor is very important. Otherwise, simply relying on destiny will actually be very, very detrimental for me. So both go hand in hand. And some people say, I worked so hard, I work all my life, but I don't get the results. And that's because that's not in my destiny. So these are very esoteric questions, and one can argue again and again, what is my destiny? How can I change it? I'm working so hard. But one has to remember the golden principle from the Gita. Try your best, The efforts and the endeavor is in your hand, but the fruits are not. The fruit is up to the will of the Lord. And that is why Arjun was coaxed by the Lord again and again. Just fight, do not worry about the sinful reactions. I will take care of them. So Arjun was coaxed to performing his dharma or his efforts here. And then in Bhagavad Gita 1859 purport, it is mentioned, no one can ascertain his destiny as the Supreme Lord can. Therefore, the best course is to take direction from the Supreme Lord and act. And finally, in Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers, chapter 9, it is mentioned, so naturally we cannot violate destiny. But if we do it, then we will suffer. But our destiny can be changed by Krishna when we are Krishna conscious. We do not do it, but Krishna will do it. Krishna says, I shall give you protection. That change takes place for my protection. So as we meditate on these words, we do need to remember that we do have to have faith in the Lord. Krishna has said so many things to Arjun in Bhagavad Gita. We have to have faith in his words. Without faith, we will not be able to surrender. Surrender is only possible if we have faith in something. If we don't have faith, then the surrender is also going to be very difficult here. So these are some of the aspects which were talked about in these two wonderful verses. We talked about what our real identity is, what it means by a perfectly realized soul, and then we also touched upon what is liberation, who is a liberated yogi, and finally we talked about destiny, and then of course our constitutional position is to always be the servant and the servant and the servant of our Lord. And if we are fully absorbed in the service of the Lord, eventually through the mercy of Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, a samadhi position can be attained. But for a pure devotee, samadhi is also not enough. A pure devotee is always desirous of rendering service to the Lord, whether it's on this planet or any other planet, without desiring liberation. So I will end the class here now. If anybody has any comments or corrections or questions, I'm happy to take them. And these purports are brilliant. They are actually self-explanatory. Srila Prabhupada's purports are so nice, one can meditate upon them. Thank you so much for your time. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Thank you, Prabhu. It's all your blessings. I'm greedy for blessings now. Totally. I was reading how important it is to be greedy in Krishna consciousness.